Best laid plans in a trash compactor. Nuisance factor, nuisance factor. Can't get herpes from a tractor. Nuisance factor, nuisance factor. In the way of what you're after. Nuisance factor, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Well, hello, Adam Rowe.
Well, hello, Boris Galyastov.
How's it going?
It's going pretty good. How about you?
Pretty good, man. It's good. It's good to have you here, just you and me.
It's good to be back on the Factor, man. It's been a couple weeks, so we've been looking forward to getting back in gear with the important stuff, the podcasting. Of
Absolutely.
Course.
We had originally planned to have Nick back today, but there was a little snafu, so we'll have him back in a couple weeks. But today it's just you and me, and we'll chat a little bit about current events.
All right. Dealer's choice, man. Dealer's choice.
That's right. So, current events, well, we have a presidential election coming up.
Indeed we do.
And not that long ago, we had a debate.
It's an alleged election, but yes.
Hey, you're not supposed to say that.
Well, that's why we come on the Factor, to say the things we're not supposed to say.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah.
So, did you watch the presidential debate?
I rarely watch presidential debates because I don't know why. I generally find them not particularly compelling to turn on the TV, but I did, in fact, watch this one all the way through, which was a rarity, and I have to say, never seen anything quite like it in my life. I mean, right from the first question, right? I mean, it was like a train wreck that just kept wrecking and wrecking and wrecking. I couldn't believe it.
So very early on, Biden had that big snafu that I think everybody called him out on, where he kind of trailed off and didn't finish a sentence.
Several of those.
There was one towards the beginning that I remember very distinctly.
It was like the first question, wasn't it?
Was it?
I mean, I don't.
It was very close to the beginning.
Yeah, it was right off the bat.
And then throughout the debate, he struggled. He certainly struggled to fill his time.
Right.
But it wasn't. I mean, very little substance on Biden's part in general.
I mean, neither of them were particularly substantive, but I mean, Trump at least came across like coherent,
Yeah.
At least by Trumpian standards, coherent. Whereas Biden, we've been told by the media. I mean, I remember just a couple days before the debate, we had Joe Scarborough up on MSNBC. I'm going to say something, and F you if you don't like it. This is the sharpest Biden. This is the greatest Biden. That was like 48 hours out from the debate. Like 5 minutes after the debate's over, they're like, oh, we got to get this guy out of here. He's definitely, he's got to go. Like, how does that happen?
Yeah, I remember he was described as keenly probing.
Keenly. Anal probing, maybe.
Oh, man. So, do you remember his State of the Union address?
I do remember the State of the Union address. I saw some of it. I unfortunately didn't watch all of it, but I've seen some of it, and I understand that he was considered to be sharper, more coherent during that. But at the same time, he wasn't having to actually. That was written out for him. He had his teleprompters. He had all this stuff. That's not the same as fielding. I mean, they say like, they didn't know what questions they were going to ask, but how do you not know what questions they're going to ask? I mean, the questions are so obvious. You ought to know what questions they're going to ask. So I don't even know if that's really so much of a factor or not.
And didn't they reveal afterwards that he actually had the questions in advance? I believe there was somebody let it slip that he had the questions in advance and had the opportunity to prepare.
I don't know that he officially had the questions in advance. I think the official narrative is that he did not. However, it would not surprise me in the least to find out that somebody got the questions and got them to whoever was speaking into his earpiece at the debate.
Yeah. So the State of the Union, the first 45 minutes was unusually strong, I thought. But, a lot of people speculated that he might have been on some uppers.
Well, I mean, there's a lot of talk about that. I mean, I think Tucker Carlson said that he's got sources that say that he absolutely gets, juiced up with something when they troll him out on stage.
It's hard to believe considering the contrast between the way he normally presents and the way he presented it during the State of the Union.
Well, not to mention the completely black dilated pupils are a dead giveaway. We see that sometimes from him.
I'm no doctor.
Yeah, I'm no doctor, but I've done speed and I know what it does to your pupils. So there's that.
Yeah, but then at the 45-minute mark, he still messed up, man. Even at his strongest, he was already having problems. So I totally understand where you're coming from when you say, Why is it that these folks are acting like they're only just coming to the realization that something is off?
Oh, I mean, that's just an obvious gap. I mean, this debate was really a turning point, not just in like the Biden narrative, but like the narrative of the meta narrative of the media's narrative of the media, because it's like their story is, oh my gosh, we thought he was so great and sharp, we had no idea that he was actually on the verge of Alzheimer's and maybe has Parkinson's. We don't like, it's a big surprise to us. Give me a break. I mean, that can't be true. They know that they know they're lying. They know that we know that they're lying, but they keep lying. So why do they keep lying? Because they have to keep lying, because they can't. They have nowhere else to go with it. They've painted themselves into a corner, and they're kind of stuck.
But they're not lying anymore. So if they were lying, we can give them the benefit of the doubt. Let's say they just didn't detect what seemed so obvious to the rest of us.
How is it that nobody hasn't been to Washington in 30 years of his life and has never been around Biden and has no sources in the White House and is not, a paid media Washington, D.C. shill? How is it that I've known this for some time now, but none of them could figure it out, even with all those advantages? I'm sorry, but that's a lie. I can't give them the benefit of the doubt on that. No, I can't go there.
Exactly what a paid Washington shill would say.
Oh, yes. I'm actually a spook.
Well, we'll get to that, because there's some very interesting stuff that you've shared with us recently in the wake of that assassination attempt, which we'll be getting to in a minute. So back to the debate. I watched the RFK version of the debate. So RFK held, he was excluded by CNN. He was not allowed to participate despite having like outrageously high polling numbers for a third party.
Right.
But, of course, he was also denied Secret Service protection until very recently, which I think is a travesty.
Sure.
But he did his own. He had John Stossel host it. And,
really?
And what they did was essentially they aired it on X, on Twitter.
Right.
And they played the debate, and they followed the same rules, but essentially they would pause it after Trump and Biden would have their turn, and then give RFK a chance to kind of respond on the same topic.
Interesting.
Yes. It was quite interesting, because you get to kind of see where they were both, wrong, exaggerating, lying. It's funny how they accused Trump of lying, but Biden lied up and down during that debate.
I don't even know if you can call it lying when it comes from Biden. It just comes off as like he's just lost. I mean, it's like, to lie implies that you have the mental capacity to know what the truth is, to know what the story is, and to come up with your own version of it. And I don't see that coming from him at this point. Is he stating untruths? Yes. But lying gives you like credit for a thought process, a higher thought process that I just don't see happening with this man, at least not in that instance at that debate.
Okay. I would say that's fair.
I don't know if you can call that lying. I think you just call that, being helpless and pathetic and ridiculous and stuck in a situation that's much bigger than what you're capable of handling at the time.
Two things kind of pop into my head thinking about that debate. The first thing is their claims regarding Ukraine, specifically Trump's claims, which, RFK points out they're not exactly truthful. Because Trump is holding himself out as somebody who would have stopped the war, who would have prevented it. It wouldn't have happened in the first place. But let's not forget that Trump was president during a portion of the time that Ukraine was conducting operations in the Donbass. And so at that point, Putin was already warning. He was saying, look, they're attacking the civilian population. Obviously, you got to take what Putin says with a grain of salt. But a lot of people feel like had the government of Ukraine not been bombing the Donbass region from 2014 forward,
right.
That's really what it would have taken to avoid the war. And according to RFK, and I believe this checks out, I did look at it, during Trump's administration from 2016 to 2020, Trump had actively participated in the bombing. He supported Ukraine in doing what it was doing. And he even sent Pompeo in 2019, according to RFK, to ensure that the aggression continued, or aggression as perceived by the Russians continued.
Right.
And so I just thought it was really interesting, because for a while now I've kind of viewed Trump as the anti-war candidate. and this is owing to the fact that he hadn't started any new wars. There was that incident with Iran where, despite killing Soleimani, which I thought was absolutely wrong, but afterwards, when an unmanned drone was knocked down, he refused to retaliate. So.
Well, I think his foreign policy vis-a-vis the other recent presidents is certainly less warlike than them on a lot of counts. But there's no question that that there were wars going on. That the whole Ukraine situation. That stretches back into the second Obama administration. That was going on in 2014, and the build-up to all of that, the clientization by the State Department and the blob of Ukraine, and the building up of Ukraine's military forces, and apparently the deployment of biological laboratories and various NBC type weaponry to Ukraine had been going on for 10, 15 years at the time that Trump came in.
Yeah, but I think the point I'm making is just that his claim that he would have stopped the war is not supported by his actions. In fact, his actions directly precipitated the conflict.
Well, you could interpret what he was saying as, look, I wouldn't have let it get this far. Once I realized that Putin was really going to go in, I'd have made a deal. And I think he probably would have at least tried to do that. Now, could he? I think that if it was just a question of him and Vladimir Putin, he probably could have made that deal, but would he have had the ability to maneuver the State Department, CIA, Pentagon into making that kind of deal? That's highly doubtful, to be frank with you. I don't know that Trump ever was able to rein in that portion of the bureaucracy. And in fact, I think that they were far more powerful and exerted their policy far more definitely and forcefully than Trump during Trump's years. That's one of the weaknesses of Trump, actually, that he was not able to rein in that bureaucracy.
Yeah. Now, it did feel very palpably to me at the time that he was sort of figuring out who was on the level and who wasn't, and that's probably evidenced by his firing of John Bolton.
Well, when you're president of the United States, you don't get credit for trying to figure it out. You either do it or you don't. I'm sorry, but that sounds like the dog ate my homework as far as from the Trump people to me.
That's fair, but and also, but Trump is like the fire guy, right? He's not known for hiring people. He's known for hiring people and then fire. He's really known for the firing.
Sure.
He did a lot of that,
Sure.
Probably in ways that we would have agreed with him, but
many ways that I agree with him. But he should have cleaned house right from the jump, like Reagan did when Reagan first came in. He fired everybody.
But we
Trump
all
didn't
know
do
how Reagan ultimately descended into the same kind of corruption that you and I now rail against. His collusion with the CIA, hurting Americans on the streets of Los Angeles.
Reagan had definitely some highly critical policies that I'm highly critical of, for sure. But Reagan was able to hold the country together and win in, I think, one of the biggest landslides I think ever in his second term. Trump was not able to do that, and he was able to cap his presidency with the signature alleged winning of the Cold War. I don't know how you really get credit for winning a war where the other side essentially voted to disband its government after 70 years, but he got that, and he won that. He won the narrative war there, and you got to give the man credit for that.
I got to say, in my naivete, I give him full credit for that.
Yeah.
Because I feel like Gorbachev was instrumental in dismantling the Soviet Union. And I think that getting Gorbachev to the point where he wanted to do that, where he felt, I think very strongly, that the West had it right, had to do with Reagan and Reagan's charm and ability to convince people.
I'm going to bring this up. You and I have actually already discussed this, but I'd like to get it on recorded for all time for everybody here, because it's something that I was watching. I can't remember. It was some talking head, but brought up the point that revolutions are generally, they're battles. They're even like bloodless revolutions. There's protests and there's a coup and there's stuff like that. I don't know that there's any other example that I can think of, at least in history, where a government just said, you know what, it's been a great run, but let's just go ahead and have a vote. I move that we just dissolve our government and give it to somebody else. And the whole Soviet Union was like, yes, let's dissolve the government. Let's hand it over to Yeltsin.
It wasn't like that. Gorbachev didn't dissolve the government. It wasn't voluntary on Gorbachev's part. Gorbachev was under the illusion that once he declared glasnost and allowed everybody to voice their interest in remaining in the Union or dropping out of it, he was under the illusion that the Union would somehow be preserved. And he maintained that illusion until the very end, until Yeltsin essentially said, look, I'm the president of Russia. I don't need a president of the USSR.
Right. But isn't that essentially what happened? Did not the USSR essentially decide to dissolve itself as a government?
Well, no, they put it up to a vote, and the republics decided each on their own whether or not to remain in the Union. And that's what essentially led to the collapse, is because all of these republics said, we want to be independent.
Right.
And, that caused a bunch of territorial issues on the back end, especially ones that, we're dealing with now in Ukraine.
Is that not an unprecedented event in geopolitics, though, for a government to essentially, fall on its sword like that?
Well, this is why I think it had so much to do with those intangibles that Reagan wielded so very well.
Is Reagan that good? Is he that persuasive? I mean, he's persuasive for Americans. Obviously, he was a great communicator, but my God, the Soviet Union let's just have a vote. I don't know if we want to be, a country anymore. It's crazy.
He flew Gorbachev around. He showed him our backyard swimming pools.
Swimming pools.
What was possible when you had freedom, when you had freedom of speech.
Swimming pools, power. Swimming pools, power. Swimming pools, yes, swimming pools.
But you forget, Gorbachev was no Trump. He was no Reagan. He was a weak politician.
Yeah, and an idealist, I think.
Very much idealistic, and not in a good way. He wasn't pragmatic enough to lead, certainly not to lead the Soviet Union like his predecessors were ruthless as fuck. Gorbachev didn't have that in him.
Right.
And for my part, I don't resent Gorbachev or hate him like a lot of people do.
Right.
Not because the Soviet Union fell apart, but because of what happened in the wake of it and how people lost everything. And But yeah, I do give Reagan a lot of credit over what happened.
Tying it back to Trump, so like to compare Trump to Reagan like that, I don't think we're there yet. Both of them have objectionable policies, in my opinion. Many that I certainly don't agree with.
Well, Reagan was definitely next level.
But Reagan was able to unite. When he came in, it was just as crazy derangement on the left and the far left as anything that we saw on Trump. That's my memory of it now. I was a kid. But by the end, it really seemed like he had really united a huge chunk of, both sides of the quote unquote aisle at that time, behind not necessarily his policies, but him as as whatever he was, as a charisma, as a cult of personality, that's what Reagan was, is a cult of personality.
Yeah. Well, I think we're going to see, we both watched a little bit of the RNC. I watched quite a bit of the RNC, and, Trump's message seems to be very much in line with Reagan's message,
Yeah.
They're pounding the unity aspect. He seems to really be trying to reach across the aisle. He said in the speech, I have no interest in being the president of half the country. There's no victory in that. I'm the president for all Americans. That's my goal. He seems to at least be trying it. Now, does he have the charisma and the verbosity of Reagan? No. Reagan was, he was just oozing charm.
He had an aura. He really did have an aura. Now, that could just be, I was a kid when Reagan was president, so it's hard for me to, I can't really, my memory of him is as a kid would remember him, but he seemed to have like an aura. There was just a power, just
I can tell. Look, I wasn't here. I never saw Reagan live. I never saw him on TV during the time that he was making speeches. Right. But I've watched so many, and dude, he has an aura. It's undeniable. It's so powerful. Dude, I just watched that speech that he gave after the assassination attempt. Remember? And there's like a balloon that goes off in the audience, and so quickly could miss me.
Yeah. Yeah, he was fast, man.
What a tough guy.
Early on, at the end of his tenure, he was supposedly having some problems with Alzheimer type issues as well.
The gods are cruel.
They are. They're crazy and cruel.
But
I really think the debate was just a huge turning point in U.S. politics. We went from a situation where it seemed that the left was more or less united behind Biden and ready to fight, and at least the MAGA wing of the Republican Party was united behind Trump, and then you had these independents and rhinos and somewhere in the middle. I call them rhinos. I shouldn't call them rhinos, but non-Trump Republicans in the middle. And it just really, the wheels just came off for the DNC after that. They just went into, we had about a week and a half, maybe a 2-week news cycle where all you heard was every Democrat talking head on the media, we got to get rid of this guy. Here's 6 more reasons to get rid of him. All of a sudden they're being critical of him. All of a sudden they're asking real questions of him. It was like, what am I watching?
But I mean, I think you and I had doubts about his competence for a long, long time, not just even recently. I remember watching the primary debates for the Democrats back in 2020, and even back then, he didn't seem like he was sharp enough to carry it. I was really surprised that everybody just kind of fell in line, including Tulsi Gabbard and Bernie Sanders. They all just kind of fell in line and endorsed him after the fact. But the dude's performance during those debates wasn't strong. It was interesting though, because sometimes it was stronger than others, and it really felt like the difference was palpable. And I remember making comments about how he was juicing, during those times that he was successful. But this was back in 2020, 4 years ago.
Yeah, and I mean the DNC had incredible. Like our friend, we were talking to a friend of ours about this at the conference we were at the other day, but. I mean, the DNC's party discipline at that time. Joe Biden comes into South. He's getting crushed. He comes in, wins South Carolina. All of a sudden, boom! Everybody drops out. The whole field drops out and unites behind him. There's nothing like that on the Republican side. That could never happen on the RNC on the GOP side.
I'm trying to remember. Did Marianne Williamson ever endorse him?
I don't know.
I think she might have been the only holdout. I hope I'm not wrong about that.
I don't know, but it just seemed like he went from getting crushed in a couple primaries to winning South Carolina to we're all dropping out and supporting him. Like really one primary? That's all it takes. I mean, South Carolina of all that's the linchpin of U.S. politics for 2020. Apparently, it was. I don't know.
Yeah. All right. Well, So anyway, the first thing, like I said, about the debate that stood out to me was that, their claims about Ukraine. And I thought the RFK version of the debate was very insightful because he was able to call them out, both of them out on their bullshit. The second thing that stood out was their pissing contest about who's better at golf.
Oh, yeah, and what about, you said they were losers and whatever. No, I didn't. You made it up. No, you said it. There were 17 people there that said I didn't say it. Well, I got a guy that said you said it. It was like 5 minutes of the debate. Like, no substance at all. Just, you said it. No, I didn't. Yes, you did. No, I didn't. Here's a guy. Yeah, it was like your mom, like infinity. I mean, it was so childish. It was ridiculous. But you know what? The actual substance of what was said, to me, that was like second or maybe even the third consideration. I was so focused on the body language of Joe Biden, especially during the way they had that set up, so it was the two boxes and you could see both of them pretty much the whole. They finally stopped showing Biden after a while because it was so bad. But
I noticed that too.
The body language was so much more powerful and was so much of a just hit you in the face with like, oh my God, this guy is. He's hurt. I mean, he's not okay. Like, I mean, sometimes he just looked like Mr. Magoo. Like he was just like he looked like he was in a trance or something. And that there was nothing substantive that was said on either side that was even comparable to the message that was sent to me by that. And I have to imagine a lot of other people who saw this were. I mean, like the substance is lost. I mean, we're just like gawking at this guy who's like. He's losing his mind in real time on TV at the presidential debate.
Yeah, but again, like the debate for me was like nothing new. I mean, I'd seen him at the State of the Union. Yeah. I saw how he was juiced up, and he's still fucked up at the 45-minute mark. Like he can't do it. He's not capable. Yeah. And it was obvious to me beforehand. In fact, I'm more surprised when he's coherent, when he's making sense than I am.
It's got to the point where it's like NASCAR, like I'm not really into NASCAR, but if I'm watching NASCAR, what do I want to see? I want to see a big car wreck. Okay, I want to see cars flying. I want to see explosions. I want to see the wreck. That's how I am with Joe Biden. When I watch him, I'm not even really listening to him. I'm just waiting for him to just, totally just, lay an egg. That's where we're at with it. It's on that level. It's infotainment. It's ridiculous. It's sad, really.
Well, anyway. Yeah, so I get what you're saying. And, of course, it was so much more about the body language of both candidates than it was about the substance because, frankly, we already... Well,
there was very little substance, let's be honest.
With Trump, it's like he makes 5 bullet points, but he talks for an hour. So it's like it's just he's rehashing the same material, but it's but if you listen to it, you're like, okay, well, I know what he's saying. I know the 5 things that he wants me to take away from this. Right? That's pretty much Trump. With Biden, and I don't know if this is true for the rest of the Democrats either, but like it's just the most meandering morass of nonsense. I'd take the 5 bullet points in an hour and a half of talking over just no bullet points at all.
Ironically,
an hour and a half of talking.
Ironically, Biden continuously tries to number his bullet points. Number 1, but he very rarely gets to 3. Sometimes he gets through 2.
Dude,
Number 2. Did he ever get to 3? He got to 3 probably once or twice.
What a great drinking game that was, man. Like, I was doing that shit during the debate. I was like, my daughter and my wife were watching it with me. I was the only one drinking, but I was like, okay, we're gonna see. Notice how many times there's a 1 without a 2.
Or a 2 without a 3. He usually most of the time he gets to 2, but he never hardly ever gets to 3.
I give him a pass on the 3, but the number of times that he doesn't even get to 2, there's absolutely no reason for number 1. And sometimes he'll say number 1 like halfway through the sentence.
Oh yeah.
He'll start answering something and he'll say number 1. Never gets to number 2.
It's a linguistic safety blanket. It's like, okay, go to your list. Go to your list. You can see it in his eyes. Go to your list. Go to the list. Don't forget the list. Correct. And then when he forgets what he's saying, it's, well, anyway, or look, here's the deal. And he just starts talking about something else.
Yeah. All right. Well, so question before we kind of move on to the convention. I think that's
there's a little something that occurred right before the convention that we probably want to touch on.
We will. Let me just ask you real quick. What is your? I really like RFK Jr.
Yeah.
And in the perfect world, I would absolutely be voting for him over the other 2 clowns. Like, I have no problem with that. Now, I got to say, and we'll get to it. There's some things about Trump that are just intangible. That we definitely have to address. But What are your thoughts on RFK Jr.?
First of all, I like RFK Jr. a lot, and I think on the really big points, on the issues that I think are important personally, I think he's probably more aligned with what I think than any of the candidates. And I think he's. And maybe I'm drinking the Kool-Aid a little bit, but I think he's real. He comes off to me as honest, and maybe I don't agree with everything he's all about. Certainly some of his environmental ideas I'm strongly opposed to. But I think he's real, and I think he's genuine, and he comes off that way to me. And then there's the whole, his father. Of course, we all know what happened to his father and his uncle. And there's something for me. I'm a guy who has this sort of deference to tradition and this sort of ideas about the. I feel very strongly about the history and that it matters now, and he really. It feels to me like he could carry that torch, and I think that's an important torch, and a torch that somebody needs to carry, and I'm not sure there's anybody that could carry it other than RFK Jr. So yeah, I like him, especially when he first jumped in the race. He was just really just burning it up with just zinger after zinger that really that I was on board with. He had who was his manager at the beginning was, I believe, Kucinich. Is that right? And while Kucinich was running his campaign, it was. For at least if he was trying to get my vote, it was flawless. Okay, yeah. I guess he fired him. Who was the new person?
He brought in his daughter-in-law. Okay. I guess, who's a former CIA person.
And at that point, the campaign sort of started to drift off into this sort of globalist neoliberal schmooze that I find.
Well, just based on that appointment, because his rhetoric hasn't changed.
He started to emphasize certain things like the Green New Deal and climate change that I think is highly questionable, but we're not going to get into that controversy right now. He started emphasizing issues that really are less important to me. And so I thought his campaign lost his campaign lost a little steam at that point, but he's still, in my opinion, probably the better choice of the 3 that are out there. But of course, he has no chance of ever being elected or even getting on a ticket of one of the major parties. And so it's kind of much ado about nothing to a certain extent.
Yeah, for so long, I railed against the 2-party thing, and thought that maybe having a third party would be the solution. I no longer think that. Not for a while.
It would be great if we had a third party that had a chance. Sure, it would be great. But we have to get there, and we're not there.
I think more or less like things coalesce into 2 camps anyway, and each party has so many different camps and ideologies within it. At least 2 that you can identify on each side, like neoliberal and progressive on the Democrat side, neoconservative and libertarian on the right.
I don't know. The mainstream of the two parties, if you take MAGA out of the Republican Party, the mainstream of the two parties is pretty much indistinguishable as far as I can tell.
Yes, I agree with you. But that's only one part of the party. And there's really, really good people in both parties that advocate for those very different positions. I think
they're on the fringe of their parties.
They are but that's just because they, like Rand Paul just doesn't have the charisma. I supported him in 2016 during the primaries when he ran against Trump, but he just doesn't carry it. He's not able to. Now, tomorrow we might get somebody, but I would also credit people like Rand and Jim Jordan and those like freedom people in the Republican Party for Trump, because I think, but for them kind of paving the way, Trump may very well be another neocon.
Well, I mean, there's the Republican Party is right now divided between MAGA and the old guard,
And now the old guard is in the minority, whereas before...
we noticed at the RNC, right? No Dick Cheney, no George Bush, no, none of those guys, none of that coterie, no Condoleezza Rice, none of those,
But Mike Pompeo.
Yeah, well,
What gives?
It's the last dinosaur left.
Why that guy?
I don't know.
I mean... That guy's a disaster, man.
Well, there's a lot of disasters in both parties. There's no question about that.
And, I felt a very palpable change in the room during his speech.
I didn't watch it, so I don't know.
Felt that the Republicans in the room were, what the fuck is this guy doing up there?
They probably were. I'm sure
they were. Three-letter agency guy.
Not all of them. I mean, there's still the Bush machine and the Cheney machine and that whole... that whole neocon group, they still exist. They're still around. They still wield power in the GOP. They've just been pushed to the edge. They've been pushed out of the limelight right now, I think.
Yeah.
There's nothing that won't stop them from coming back. There's a third generation of Bushes that I don't think are done, playing politics here.
Well, I mean, can you imagine anybody with less charisma than Jeb Bush?
Oh, sure. I can remember. There's a lot of people with less charisma than Jeb Bush.
Well, Jeb used to have. I like Jeb.
I personally think Bernie has less charisma than Jeb Bush, but I find him incredibly lame. He is incredibly lame.
Bernie?
I find him totally. Bernie, oh my god!
I find him very. Really?
Yeah, I don't care for him.
He's like a liberal Nixon, man. I love it.
It just comes off as like just completely fake to me. But.
Fake?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Bernie?
Yeah.
I mean, his voting record is like pristine, man. He's never voted for a war, man.
Okay.
Guy's on a level, dude.
I think he's a sellout.
Well, Tulsi Gabbard is a sellout. They all turned around and endorsed a brain dead loon to lead their party. It's insane.
She actually left the party after that, so give her credit for that.
After endorsing him.
Well, I mean, it is what it is.
Jimmy Dore lost his mind. He had her on. He's like, how could you? Mm-hmm. How could you? Your differences with them are so fundamental. You don't want needless war. And they do. That's all they want. That's all they salivate over. Right. How could you do this?
Well, I can do more good for the party on the inside than the outside, so I had to. I mean,
she gave some answers, let's just say.
That's the actual answer. Yeah, that's the only rational answer she could possibly give.
Yeah, but it was very disappointing.
So all of a sudden, the MAGA machine is just clicking and well-oiled and just seems to be cruising. And the DNC machine is just, man, it is in a shambles. And that's just after the debate. So we have these news cycles of just awful. I mean, how could you see it as anything but awful if you're a Democrat? And then, oh my God, over the weekend, the assassination attempt. What in the world? I mean, it's like a movie. It's like if you put this in a movie and made this into a movie, it's like a bad spy novel, man. It would be too unbelievable. It's like, I understand why so many people on the left are questioning this and bringing the conspiracy theory into it, because it's too perfect. It's too freaking perfect. I mean, whoa. So anyway, initial thoughts on the assassination attempt from Boris Geisel.
Well, okay. So the positives of the assassination attempt is that it was an attempt and not a success. Okay, I give you that. I agree. As a result, Trump has been elevated in the eyes of not just me, I think, but the entire public. And he has, certainly. And the way he handled it in the wake of it, was extraordinary. And I'm not a supernaturalist by any extent, man, but the energy is palpably different since the assassination attempt.
Yeah, I've never been, I am not a Trump fanboy, although there's things about Trump that I like and things about Trump that I don't like. I'm also not a TDS person, obviously, either. But this is what I'll say about Trump, and this is an argument that I don't think even the most hardened, Democrat pundit has any real answer to. Trump could be done. All he has to do is make one phone call. You guys leave me alone, leave my family alone, drop these cases, and I'll be out. I'll go and live my billionaire life. I'll have my fun with my billions of dollars and, live out my last 10 years of my life in pleasure and whatever. He could easily do that. I think anybody with that kind of money and that kind of resources would at least be tempted to do that, because the Democrats would take that deal in a minute, man. They wouldn't have to call Obama, whoever he was talking to, the chief of staff for Biden. It would be like, done. Yes, you go, deal. It would be over. He could be out. That was before he took a bullet. Okay, now he's taking a bullet in the ear, and he's going forward, and there's no rational. It would be. I think anybody after that would understand if he said, look, I need to live. I don't want to die. I would have considered it. And the fact that he's pushing forward after that, what other reason could he possibly have than he actually believes that he's going to do something good for the world and the country? What other reason could he have?
Well, I've been asking myself that question. Obviously, power.
Okay.
Power. People risk a lot for power. People often risk comfort and life and limb for power.
But he's already got, with his billions of dollars, more power than 99.999% of any person who's ever lived in their life in the history of humanity.
I know, but don't we always ask the question of why do billionaires want more money?
Okay.
And it seems like because when you have some, it's not enough, and when you have a lot, it's even less than enough. It's even less than not enough.
I don't know, man.
But certainly he's used. That is the narrative, right? From the Trump camp. It's look, he could be retired right now. He could be enjoying his life and his family. He doesn't need to be doing this. He's doing this because he loves America and he loves its people.
Or because he wants power.
Well,
or maybe a little both.
Well, if you're asking me what I believe, I don't think it's. I say that because it's a plausible explanation. But
sure.
I don't know that I can explain my feeling necessarily, but no, I don't think it's power. I think he's an American. I think deep down, because it's like when the rubber meets the road, man. You either. Look, dude. My love for America. It's so hard to explain. It's like it's religious. I've said this before. I'm not a religious person. But it's like as close as I get to it, It's like I feel it so deeply and just And so it's not inconceivable to me that somebody could have everything and put it all on the line because he loves his country.
It's just, of all the people to do that, Donald J. Trump, there's people that you could see doing that. George Washington, people like that, but Donald J. Trump is that guy.
But we also talked about Trump being the quintessential American, man. I think you said like the used car salesman vibe.
Sure.
And there's a lot of negatives with that, but there's also a lot of positives, and it does represent America.
He's a hustler. There's no question. He's got, even though he's born with a silver spoon in his mouth, he's got a hustler vibe to him.
And look, I'm sorry, man. It's like the other thing that I'm a family man. You're a family man, and I gotta say, a lot of how I judge people has to do with how they treat their family and how their family regards them.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you saw the podcast with Ivanka. She went on Lex Friedman.
I haven't seen it
for over 2 hours.
Yeah.
Dude, that's not a simple person, man. That's not a bad person.
No.
That is a deeply thoughtful person.
Yeah.
She goes into philosophy. She goes into all these things that she thinks about very, very deeply. You don't raise children like that if you're a scumbag. You raise crack addicts who beat up women when you're a scumbag, in my opinion. You raise daughters who remark in their diary that their showers with you were probably inappropriate. I'm so I can't overlook that. You know, the media thinks we should because they find. I believe several journalists said the whole Hunter laptop thing was just boring. It was just boring to them.
This is just
so uninteresting.
Everybody does crack all the time and bones hookers, and apparently takes videos every single time he has sex. And
did you see the video of him like beating up the girl like P. Diddy, like dragging her back into the hotel room? What was that?
Yeah, I saw that.
This is this
buck naked dragging her back. He was nude. If I believe.
Very hot video.
Yes, very hot. Very not for children. Not for the children.
You know, and seeing him at the RNC with his 10 grandchildren, hearing his granddaughter spoke about her grandpa, how he gives her sweets, and how he calls her when she's at school to ask her about her golfing game because they golf all the time. He's just a normal guy with her, and she loves him so much, and he loves her, and he always has time for her.
Yeah.
I'm like, and she's beautiful, by the way. This is Ron Jr.'s daughter.
Yeah, Kai, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I saw some of that clip.
I mean, dude, I'm sorry, okay? Like, if you've got that, you're at least doing something right. Like, you know, you're certainly not the evil person the media is portraying you to be.
Well, I mean, that much has been obvious from the jump. I mean, the media, nobody hated Trump until he got into politics. Nobody in the media was trying. I mean, I'm sure there were some people that hated him, but it wasn't like pervasive. I mean, you know, until he went into politics, and then all of a sudden he was Hitler. You know, and it's just like another example of like, are we really supposed to believe this? Like this guy's been Hitler all this time, and all of a sudden now guys just realized it or figured it out somehow. You divined it from I don't know where.
Well, apparently Biden's been super competent this entire time, and they only just figured out he wasn't like the other day.
Right. So. Exactly.
So do you remember you posted you shared a photo of a fucking FBI agent on top of that sloped roof.
Yes. The
hosing it down.
The sloped roof, which defeated the United States Secret Service, apparently.
Well, it was a real concern, even though like the other snipers were also on the sloped roof.
Even more sloped than that one.
I don't know.
Yeah,
but I think you know here's the crazy thing. All right, so let's say first of all, you're obviously concerned about evidence, DNA. Well. It's like it just happened. Why are they hosing the roof?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I saw that picture. I saw it on enough, you know, at least marginally, you know, credible news services to believe that it was real, and apparently it is real.
I don't know. Is it? Was it confirmed?
I don't know that it's been confirmed by the MSM, but it's. I'm pretty sure that it's correct. It basically shows an FBI agent on top of the roof where the sniper was with a hose, apparently hosing down the roof. And my question is like, you know, this picture.
Job?
Well, this picture came out, as far as I can tell, about 72 hours, 3 days or so after the assassination attempt. And it's like, why is the FBI hosing down the roof where it's a crime scene where one of the biggest political crimes in recent years occurred? I mean, have we collected all the DNA? Do we have all the particulates? Do we have all the forensically relevant chemicals? I mean, like, does the FBI, is that their job to hose down crime scenes 3 days after the crime occurs? I don't understand that.
Thing, because I can just say, okay, well, they probably collected all the evidence they needed. Why is there an FBI agent hosing this shit down? You guys don't have a fucking janitor to do that? Yeah,
don't you call in the crime scene cleanup crew?
Is this normal? Like FBI goes in and after they do their investigation, they're over there fucking cleaning someone's roof?
I mean, now the way the video is, it's just one photo. You know, I don't know exactly. I don't necessarily know definitively that they were cleaning up the crime scene, but it sure does look like they're hosing down the crime scene, and the guy is clearly wearing an FBI T-shirt. So, I mean, I have to wonder, what in the world is going on here? This was a huge crime that only was committed like 3 days ago. I mean, I don't think that the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office just hoses down a crime scene after 3 days. I've never heard of that happening.
Well, let's say after a week. Would you expect JSO to be hosing down a crime scene, period?
I mean,
wouldn't they just let the street sweepers do it?
What if the crime lab needs some more samples? I don't know. What you know? I'm not a forensic expert, but it's certainly suspicious, right? It's at least something that makes you go,
Fair enough. All right, so
I want to wait one more thing.
Yeah.
The picture, this picture, like this is why these people are formulating conspiracy. That picture's just it's it's like, can it be real? It's so perfect it's hard to believe that it's real, but it does appear to be real. I mean, I saw it on TV. Yes, that photograph, man, that is a Pulitzer Prize winning photograph. Well, that is going to be like an Iwo Jima kind of photograph.
But you watched the speech of the RNC where he started off talking about the attempt and exactly what happened step by step from his perspective.
Yeah, I did not see that part of the speech.
He said that, when it happened, he went to the ground. First of all, he gives the Secret Service agents a lot of credit. He says they were on me in a second. The brave people, bullets whizzing over their heads. I don't think he would say, Trump is not the type to fluff. I think he genuinely felt like at least the people that rushed the stage to protect him were doing so in good faith. I know we saw a lot of pictures kind of dissecting.
Well, I mean, if he didn't think so, it would be the smart thing to do to say that publicly anyway, even if he had his doubts.
Why?
Because they are the ones that's still responsible for making sure that he doesn't die, and because it's always good to, politically, it's always smart to pat the back of the little guy.
Both of his sons said the head of the Secret Service should resign, publicly.
Okay.
So, I don't know.
I mean, it's good. I'm just saying that even if he doubted that, it's really good politics not to say it publicly.
Okay. So he fell, or went down rather, and then he said that what made him stand, was the fact that the crowd didn't run. He really gave the crowd a lot of credit. Yeah. He said in a normal situation, they would have been running. They would have been scattered. There might have been a stampede. People might have been trampled.
I mean, there was a guy behind him with his brains blown out on the...
Comparator.
I mean, like, photos came out. I mean, you can see there's blood and chunks of... presume brain matter or something. Those photos came out.
People, stayed put, and he said that. Like, it gave him courage. Like the fact of the crowd, because they didn't know if he was dead when he went down. They had every reason to assume he was dead, but instead of fleeing, you could see their faces. They were more concerned about what happened to him. Yeah, that's why they stayed put, and they were trying to point the shooter out.
Right,
and like. I don't know. Again, man.
Apparently, they had been trying to point the shooter out 10 minutes before.
Well, yes. But I mean, call me naive, call me whatever, emotionally captured. I don't know, man. But that kind of shit, man, it just resounds with me. To see my fellow Americans feel so strongly about something and to stand their ground. Like, I love that. I love it. So then, so he explained that part, and then of course, he gives a lot of credit to God.
Okay. As he should.
And I gotta say, man,
divine intervention cannot be ruled out in this one, man. I mean, this is like Pulp Fiction, right? The story of Pulp Fiction, the subplot where the guy busts out of the room and fires 3 shots and the bullets miss, and Jules has a revelation and decides that God, that was a sign from God. Yeah. It's on that level, man. It's on that. It's very much like. It's very similar to that plot in that movie, which is one of my favorite movies of all time, by the way. But not to digress. But I could see how you could interpret it that way. Certainly, I probably would have.
So as a skeptic, I'm not gonna. I don't accept necessarily the analysis there, right? That it was divine intervention. I'm highly skeptical of that. But does Trump believe it was? Yes. Yeah. And did the energy during the RNC, was it very much spiritual even for me? Yes, it was. Yeah. It was strange. It was strange, man.
I mean, I didn't watch it like you did, but some of it was quite cringe. I mean, there's always going to be cringe.
Even the part where he kissed Comparator's helmet, Like initially I was like,
yeah, that's a little cringe.
Kind of chuckled, but then I was like, God, man, I think he meant it, man. I think he fucking meant it. I think he loves this man, for the sacrifice.
Well, the guy did, all he did was show up to support a candidate
and
that
he shielded his family like a
yeah.
complete badass.
Well, I mean, he's a firefighter and he's a lifesaver and he saved their lives.
But see, I love that. I'm sorry, man. I love that. I love it when he mentions Ashley Babbitt because everybody's forgotten, but he mentions her.
Right.
He says that she was a good person. He says that she shouldn't have been killed. She was unharmed.
Sure. Her and everyone else there that day, according to the FBI.
And then he asked for a moment of silence during his big speech. He asked for a moment of silence for Corey Comparator. That moved me, man. Yeah. It really, really did. I gotta say. He didn't have to do that. He really didn't. He could have downplayed it. He could have glossed over it. He could have moved on.
Well, he has tremendous political instincts, and he knows how to play the crowd better than just about any politician around. He feeds off the crowd. I mean, the reason why they had that debate set up the way it was with no live audience is because they know that Trump plays to the crowd, man. I mean, that he just has that mental connection
going on. Because again, like my preoccupation here is I assume politicians are going to play the crowd.
Sure.
I certainly assume Trump, the salesman, is going to play the crowd. But again, the way, I don't know, man.
Trump as a spiritual being is a tough sell for me, man. I mean, I'm sorry, but it just is.
So that's what I wanted to ask you.
It's a really tough sell for me.
Did you feel it?
I mean, I didn't watch the RNC like you did.
But you saw his speech, right? I thought you said
no. I've seen just a couple of clips from it. I didn't watch the speech. I struggle with. First of all, that speech came on like I fall asleep generally about 10 o'clock most of the time. And
it ran until midnight because it was like I guess the longest speech ever given, like an hour and a half.
Yeah,
and he did really ramble like towards the back end of it. It was more like the typical Trump stuff. But the early part, man, it was just like. Fuck, man! God, dude, I still trying. I'm thinking about the way it was like I was listening with bated breath, man.
I mean, it's still for me the sell of Trump as this like spiritual figure. That's a tough sell for me. I don't know. It's hard for me to go there. I mean, yeah, it is.
Given the attempt on his life,
yeah, it's still. I mean,
I respect before then.
I respect how he handled that, and his immediate response I thought was just incredible. I mean, the whole standing up and the fight with the blood and the picture and the flag behind him, and that was incredible. It was that.
You think it's fake? You think it's all the show?
I don't know that is just no. I don't. First of all, I don't think the assassination is fake. Although I'm a confirmed conspiracy theorist, I'm not buying into that conspiracy theory.
I mean Trump's reaction, like the way that Trump.
No. I think it was genuine
because he's saying God saved him.
Okay, but no. That in the moment, in the minute, as they were taking him off the stage and he's pumping his fist. I think that was real. I think that actually happened, and that was his intuitive response to the situation, and it was incredible.
He felt like he needed to give the crowd courage. He needed to assure them that he was okay.
Yeah, I don't know about that.
He saw the concern on their faces. He said that when he was down, he could see them, but they couldn't see him. And he could see the concern on their faces. And so that it motivated him to...
The Trump machine's sort of narrative of this like spiritually realized Trump after the assassination, it's going to be a tough sell for me. I can understand why a lot of people would go there. I'm just a little too cynical for that. I'm sorry.
All right, that's fair. But I gotta say, as a skeptic and an agnostic and all these things, it's I gotta say how I felt about it, because I don't know if it's real or not either, but it seemed real. I mean, his reaction is what I'm saying.
Well, his reaction in the moment I do believe was
and like in the aftermath. Yeah,
but as far as the narrative and the framing that's gone on since then, that's not. That to me is questionable.
So does that mean that you don't think do you think Trump believes in God?
Well, I know he says he believes in God, and I have to take a man at his word. I mean, I don't know him personally.
Well, I didn't take him at his word before the assassination attempt. I thought it was clearly a vehicle for like a political vehicle. I did not think he believed in God.
I'm not aware of any time that he's ever come out and said anything other than that he believes in God. So, I mean, I got to give him at least the benefit of the doubt on that. I mean, I do think he believes in God, okay, but there's a long stretch from believing in God and actually being a conduit of spirituality and the inevitable sort of Christ-like candidate who's the martyr, the spiritual martyr sort of narrative that's being developed around all of this. I don't know, man. I'm not feeling that.
Oh man, it's crazy though. It's crazy how he turned his head just ever so slightly to look at that graphic, and just in that moment, and he would have been dead. 1 inch to the left, 1 inch to the right, dead, brain gone.
It's crazy, man. It's one of it might be the craziest thing I've.
I mean, if that happened to me, man, talk about what would drive you to believe in God. Man.
It's crazy. I mean, the feeling I had watching that on TV was the feeling I remember I had watching the 9/11 attacks on TV. I mean, it was just like it was unreal. It was unreal. I couldn't believe it. It was like I was in a movie or something. It was. I don't know. It was almost like it was a total shift of consciousness. Like, I don't know.
All right. Well,
so now the question is, what the hell happens next? Where do we go from here?
Well, I think based on what I'm hearing from the Biden camp, he may be dropping out as early as Monday.
I mean, haven't they been saying that for like 3 weeks or since the debate though?
Not the way that. I mean, I'm only really hearing more concretely, like since he's sheltered because of the COVID thing.
Yeah.
Now and certainly after the debate is when.
Well, and I know that a lot of there's at least been reporting that a lot of the big money is basically put the brakes on and said. I mean, I've seen a lot of reporting that there's a lot of donors that are withholding donations because they're just not going to give their money to this lost cause that they perceive. A perceived lost cause, I should say.
So who do you think is there? So assuming, okay, for if Biden stays in, right? I mean, that is what it is. They could still potentially cheat if you buy into that narrative, or they might lose. I don't,
Right.
But let's say Biden drops out.
Okay.
Who do you think is the person they're going to put up?
Well, I mean, I think that's the biggest problem they have. It's not just a Biden problem. It's a who in the world do we have to put in his place problem. I mean, the leading candidate seems to be Kamala Harris, but I think that's just as much of a dead loser as Biden. And then after that, what do you got? You got a bunch of, I mean, you got Gavin Newsom. Are you going to run Gavin Newsom and his record in California against Trump? I think, and it's not even like, let's say that they had the next Obama or the next Clinton. They've only got 4 months to build up a narrative around him. They don't have time to develop the momentum that they need to win a national election, assuming that we're going to get a free and fair election where the votes are counted in a reasonably, dependable manner.
I think, if I were they,
whoever they are,
who would I think? I think Buttigieg. Okay, yeah. Well, hear me out. Right, he's young, he's charismatic. I saw him during the primary debates in 2020. That would be interesting. It would potentially shake things up. I don't think people automatically have a visceral reaction to him, like a dislike. He seems to have been pretty popular with the city. He seems to be dodging a lot of criticism as transportation secretary. I would go for somebody like that to have a shot at beating Trump. Again, if things are on the level. Okay.
Well, I'm a little bit nervous about saying this, because this is going to be posted on YouTube. And I'm not saying that this is how I feel, but I would tell you this. I don't think that the American electorate is anywhere near electing an openly gay man for president. I think we're 20 years away from that, at least.
Really?
Oh, God, no. You're totally underestimating.
Who cares, man?
Okay, that's how you feel. That may be how I feel. But the bottom line is that there's a huge swath of the American public that are not going to vote for that.
But
even if they're afraid to say it, they're not going to vote for that. I'm sorry.
The RNC, multiple comments were made by different speakers about how Donald Trump accepts everybody, and they specifically said during the RNC, it was a little shocking. I don't know. Maybe they've been seeing it for a while, but they specifically said gay, straight, man, woman, we don't care. Trump loves everybody.
Right. They're going to say that, and they have to say that. And to say anything else...
Wouldn't that alienate their base, potentially? They're risking alienating their conservative base?
They have alienated a huge portion of their base with that, although nobody in their base would come out and say that publicly.
I think it's because it's safe. Even with their base, it's safe.
Okay, well, the fact that it's safe is a far cry from actually winning the United States presidential election, and I just don't think that the electorate is there. Well, but you know what? I think Trump's people would love for them to put Buttigieg on there. I think they would salivate for that.
Okay, but the other two contenders, I guess even more real possibilities, being Harris and Newsom, who stands a better chance against Trump? Between those three,
none of them stand any chance against Trump.
Buttigieg stands the better chance.
I mean, if I had to pick a horse out of those three, I'd probably take Newsom just because he's.
Oh God, no!
No, he's charismatic, man. He's got a lot of
very Luciferian.
Okay, sure.
Charisma.
Well, who in the DNC doesn't have a little Luciferianism on there?
Let me tell you, man. As somebody who likes to draw comic books, if I was drawing a comic book and one of the characters was the devil come to Earth, Okay, he would look a lot like Gavin Newsom. White teeth, sharp hair, rolled up sleeves, whole shebang.
He's like Lex Luthor with hair. he does have that Lex Luthor vibe, but he does have the hair. He has got hair. Lex was of course bald.
It's like I don't. He's so handsome and yet so repulsive at the same time. It's like unbelievable to me a little bit.
He's a very polished politician. He's a great speaker. He's got a huge machine behind him. If I had to pick a horse in that candidate, if I'm Karl Rove or whoever, Bagala, I guess, or Carvel, if I'm Carvel or whoever's running the DNC show, and I had to pick a horse out of those three you gave, I would take Gavin.
All right,
I would. I would work with that. I feel like there's more to work with there than the other two. The other two, I think, are just absolute, non-starters at the end of the day.
All right. Very interesting.
What
do you think? So I don't think Biden can endorse anybody but Kamala, though, right? Like, he has to endorse Kamala.
Well, if he doesn't endorse Kamala, it's going to, be a huge deal in the, especially in the pundit community. Yeah. I mean, the whole aspect of her being a woman and a woman of color, of course, and the first woman of color vice president, for him to drop out and not endorse her is opening up another huge fissure in his base. And there's already massive fissures in his base that he's having to sit on the fence. He's got a huge portion of his base that is just adamantly against the Israeli policy, and then another huge portion of the donor class of his base, which is 100% for the Israeli policy, and he's been for a year and a half now, or I guess a year, more or less, he's been sort of playing both sides of that the best he can, and to not, endorse Kamala, I'm sorry, to not endorse, Kamala? It's Kamala, the accent is on the first syllable, to not endorse Kamala, I mean, you're opening up another huge fissure in a very important part of your base, which is, of course, the African-American community. And I just don't know how many more fissures that he can pull together and still have any kind of chance. Or the DNC, I should say, can pull together and still have a chance at winning if we assume that there's going to be a free and fair election where all the votes are reasonably counted.
Yeah, that's fine. That's fair. I don't know how much the black community likes Kamala, though.
I don't know that she's particularly popular. I don't really know. I mean, I'm a white guy, and I don't
prosecutor. Right?
I'm sure that there's plenty of people in the African American community that don't support her and that don't like her. But once you do that publicly and you open up the narrative machine to do its magic in the media that it does, a tiny little stitch becomes a huge tear in about 3 news cycles, and I think that's what would happen.
Interesting. All right. What a strange situation.
So, do you think they'll try it again? Do you think there'll be another attempt on Trump's life?
Well, I think he's a lot more wiser and a lot more cautious. I think.
Yeah, but he's still dependent on these. I
half expected them to try to take a shot during his speech at the RNC.
I mean, he's still dependent on the Secret Service for protection, who didn't protect him last time. So why wouldn't they try again? I mean, why wouldn't they? What do they have to lose is my question. I mean, they obviously, anybody who thinks that this was an actual lone gunman, bless your heart. But if you believe, normal thinking people, that this was clearly a political act by political actors, as I do, and I think most thinking people do, why on earth? Why wouldn't they try again? What do they have to lose at this point? Nothing.
Yeah, I don't know. Did you hear about the second shooter at the water tower?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. I mean, some people are saying, well, maybe that was a Secret Service guy. You can't really. It's clear. Clearly there was a person on the water tower with a rifle. You can see that from the video. That has come out. Was that guy Secret Service? Was that guy, a black operator? Was he part of some plot? I've seen theorizing on the internet that that's the guy who actually took out the patsy on the roof when they realized that he missed. I think that might be a fair. There's some plausibility to that theory, in my opinion. We don't really know. We can't see where the bullets went exactly. We can't tell exactly what direction that person was aiming, but I know that I was watching the news coverage when it happened, and there was a lot of people coming forward saying there was a shooter on the water tower. There's a shooter on the water tower. We were taking fire from 2 different angles, and that sort of died in the media narrative for several days. And now this comes out, and I presume it won't be addressed at all by the media because they'll just pretend like it didn't happen, which is what they do. But yeah, I did see that, and yes, it is highly suspicious. And I would say that, If I had to put money on what that person was doing up there, I'd say he probably is one of the people that took out the patsy on the roof.
Man, it's hard for me to believe that they're going to try again, or rather that if they do try again, that Trump's not going to take appropriate precautions to prevent it.
If you were alive in 1963 and you had seen on TV the assassination of JFK, would you have guessed that they would send somebody in to assassinate Lee Harvey Oswald like 3 days later? Would you have ever guessed that they would have had that level of audacity?
No, they did, and they got away with it, right?
Well, they did, but do you think that after seeing that, you would have thought, oh, they're gonna assassinate Lee Harvey Oswald too? Because I don't think I would have thought that, but now I do. So I mean, why wouldn't they take another shot? Why wouldn't they? What do they have to lose?
They have an unlimited number of would-be assassins whom they can just take out afterwards. Right?
Absolutely.
Dude, it's hard for me to talk about this, man. All right,
I mean,
let's just because. God,
what about Biden? Do you think they'll try to kill him because they obviously want him out? If he refuses to go, do you think he'll die mysteriously?
But Biden's death wouldn't be mysterious.
Well, that's the whole point.
The guy's like keeling over.
I mean, don't you think that like somebody is going to get a hold of somebody close to him and be like, "Look, we can do this the easy way, or we can do this the hard way, buddy."
He said he was going to resign if there's a medical thing. He somehow got COVID in 2024. Which is a medical condition, I guess.
Yeah,
dude, he's not going to be able to fight for himself. I don't think they need to kill him. It's too much controversy. He'll probably bow out. That's what I expect.
Okay, but if he refuses, do you don't think that they'll try? I mean, they've now basically put themselves in a position where they've trashed their own candidate for like 3 weeks of news cycle. There's only if he ends up running, you just can't recover from that. So their only option left is Plan Zero. I mean, they're not above murder. They've proved. I mean, Seth Rich proved that much.
Well, right, but you're a conspiracy theorist.
Oh yeah, I'm sure. Yeah, that was just a random robbery. That didn't have anything to do with him leaking the wiki.
Nothing to see
leaking
here.
Hillary Clinton's emails to WikiLeaks. It has nothing at all to do with that. Sure. Bless your heart.
America, fuck yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. Well, let's. I want to transition to. We're kind of winding down here. It's been a little over an hour.
Okay.
I want to ask you about one other thing. This is sort of semi-related.
Okay.
Did you catch the clip of Tenacious D during Kyle Gass's birthday party?
I have seen it. Yes.
I'm sorry. So, Kyle gets a cake. He gets to make a wish. And he says, "Don't miss next time." And I guess in the wake of all of this, Tenacious D has canceled its tour.
Yeah, they've apparently canceled their careers. I mean,
not with me.
Well,
I love Tenacious D, and I thought that shit was hilarious, even though I'm a Trump supporter.
I've never really liked Tenacious D, and never been a huge fan of Jack Black.
Really?
But I don't think he should be canceled for that. Although it was tasteless, and I mean, especially the timing of it was. You have to be smarter than that if you're a public figure. But then again, these guys are like comedians and rock stars.
They're shock comics, man. That's what shock comedy is about.
Okay.
It's like remember when Kathy Griffin held the bloody Trump head up? And everybody got bent out of shape.
Yeah.
It's hilarious.
I didn't really think that either of those were all that funny, but I could clearly see that they were joking, and that the reaction was pearl clutching madness and not anything based on rationality.
Look, I mean, shock comedy isn't everybody's cup of tea, but it is some people's cup of tea. I think it's, again, people can have a difference of opinion, but my feeling was like, hey, you're now messing with our darling. It's like that thing. Remember when Trey Parker and Matt Stone got into it with the Mormons, because the Mormons were like, hey, we can make fun of Muslims all day long, but don't you dare make fun of Mormonism. It's like everybody has their little things, but come on. It's all funny if it's coming from these shock comedians, because that's what they do. Is kind of disgusting, in my opinion. It's definitely anti-free speech.
The mainstream right hates cancel culture, except for when it's time for them to cancel somebody.
And I'm sorry. I'm a little surprised you're not a fan of Tenacious D, because have you listened to their albums and all that?
I've listened to some of their music. Yeah, it's not my cup of tea at all.
No.
It's lame.
Oh my god!
I've never liked Jack Black. I never thought he was that funny.
So Jack Black and I go way back to like the early '90s when he was in a little movie called Airborne, which was like a romantic teen comedy.
I give him credit for Tropic Thunder. He was funny in that.
He was hilarious in that.
That was probably.
I think the guy's like a comedic genius, man. I think maybe you haven't seen enough of his content.
Disagree.
But anyway, I think that Republicans need to take, or not Republicans, but whoever is getting bent out of shape and trying to cancel Tenacious D needs to shut the fuck up, take a look at themselves, and realize that they are contradicting the very principles that they seem to be in favor of, i.e. freedom of speech, the ability to say whatever the fuck you want. So, because words will never hurt me. And without words, all we have are sticks and stones.
Well, I mean, after Kennedy was assassinated, of course, Malcolm X famously said that it was chickens coming home to roost, and he's always happy when his chickens come home to roost. And I think that he got very close to. He took a lot of heat in the media for that as well, man. I mean, there's something to be said for timing. And don't get me wrong, man.
Malcolm X was a political figure, so like,
true.
Here's the thing with he's not a shock comic. It's like, so how did you mean that? Why did you say that? Maybe that's worth asking.
But Malcolm X's brand of politics was shocking, in your face statements. I mean, that was his deal. I mean, and he was a brilliant man and a brilliant politician.
Absolutely. And I would not have been in favor of canceling him, but I would say that it's more acceptable for me to ask questions, right? Mm-hmm. Where a political figure says something crazy about another political figure.
Sure.
Rather than that's all Tenacious D has ever done. I mean, their albums are all about worshiping Satan. Do they really worship Satan? No, but it's hilarious.
Well, it's hard to believe that anybody worships Satan. It's pretty easy to believe that, somebody was like, I guess Jack Black was just on a Biden fundraiser like 2 weeks before, that they really did want Trump dead. So it's easy to believe that, even if it's not correct.
Again, not politicians, comedians,
Look, I don't think what happened to Kathy Griffin is right either, and I don't find her particularly funny either.
I agree with you there. I don't think she's that funny. I did think that, and it probably wouldn't have been as funny if everybody didn't lose their damn minds. Yeah. All the pro-free speech people suddenly had a problem with it. Mm-hmm. And it's like, come on, you fucking hypocrites,
Mm-hmm.
Get over it, man. Let's just say whatever the fuck we want to say, whatever we feel like saying, and just understand, words aren't bullets. You can chill the fuck out.
Yeah, you can.
So, anyway. All right. Any final thoughts on that issue?
No, I mean, I'm not a fan of Tenacious D. I'm not a fan of, being on the side of the assassin.
Well, okay, I don't think they're on
I'm not cool with that. I certainly disagree with that to the extent that it wasn't a joke and it was a serious statement. I'm not really convinced that it was a joke, but I'll give you the benefit of the doubt that you think so.
100%.
But in any event, I don't know. Pop culture and politics to me, I mean, like, I just don't care. Honestly, like, I don't care what Tenacious D does. I don't care what Kathy Griffin does. I don't care what Jerry Seinfeld thinks, or Ben Stiller, or Mark Hamill, or I don't care what any of these people think. Say what you want. I don't really care. I'm totally disconnected from that stuff. I hardly watch TV. I watch very few movies. It's just not part of my daily routine, and so it doesn't really have any relevance to my thinking.
We wouldn't even be talking about it if there wasn't this attempt to cancel them underway.
Yeah, well,
and of course, man, I mean, to be honest, man, like, I watched that clip, like, I wanted to say that. I'm like, I love, at this point, I kind of have this sort of spiritual affinity for Trump, I would say, in the wake of everything that's happened. That may change, but right now that's kind of the zone I'm in. So did I think it was kind of crude? Yes, but it's also the first thing that kind of popped into my head, just as a funny shock fucking thing. Like, if you want to be like an insult comic, this is the kind of stuff you say.
Here's what I have a natural detestation for, pearl clutching, well, I never-ism. I never. I hate that. Yeah, all of that. Like, anytime that I detect pearl clutching and I never-ism, it's just a huge turnoff for me, and I'm not with it. I'm not down for it. So, and that I don't care what you're pearl clutching about. Give me a break. Get off your, just get real.
All right. Well, Cypher Divine, I believe it's that time.
Okay.
You want to sign us off with a little prophecy?
There will be a second assassination attempt on Trump.
Oh, God forbid.
God forbid. I'm not saying that's a good thing, but that's a prophecy, not an endorsement.
Indeed.
All right.
To be continued.
All right. I'm the Cypher Divine. Later.
In the way of what you're after, nuisance factor, yeah.